I'd always wanted to try and pursue voice acting. It was like sort of just a kernel in the back of my mind, and an opportunity came up where I have a family member who lives out here, and they said, "Hey, if you want to try that ever, you could come stay here for a little while, set some roots down." And so things just sort of came together in 2016 where I moved out here to LA, and yeah, that was, I started completely fresh, basically. Didn't know a soul. Um, but yeah, that was an exciting time.
Was your goal just to pursue voiceover in general, or were you trying to get into something specific?
Well, it was video games really was where I wanted to focus. I'm also a big anime guy, so I
Mhm.
knew that anime dubbing happens a lot in LA. So, the first step was really to find out how are people being cast for these roles and what steps do I need to take, while also at the time, I started taking acting classes, workshops, that sort of stuff, because, I really hadn't had professional training up until that point. Just sort of playing around with it when I was in college. I did some theater,
Mhm.
but hadn't really taken serious acting classes until I moved out here.
And what was the job that got you into SAG?
Right. That would be, I want to say that was lower third for Demon Slayer,
Okay.
uh, where that was I'd done a couple of jobs before then that were union, and the process for, I'm sure you've gone over it on previous interviews, but it's if you work a certain amount of union jobs, you have to join the union. You become a must join. And the next time you try to do it, they're going to send you a letter that says like, "Hey, why don't you pay your induction fee and you can start working as many of these as you want." So it was, when the opportunity arose, it's like you've got this role if you want to take it. I was like, back and forth because it's, you want to join the union if you have enough opportunities to warrant joining the union,
Hmm.
and at that time, I was speaking with uh, enough studios about union work that I thought, well, A, I want to be in Demon Slayer. And B, I had enough work opportunities on the horizon that it just made sense.
Hmm. And some of the other people I've talked to who were the lower three demons specifically, they were just autocast.
Hmm.
Was
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
okay?
that was the same case for me. Yeah, I received that email, and I hadn't put in an audition ahead of time, but for that casting director, I had been submitting with her for a couple years at that point, really, and just doing, I'd had my fair share of roles, so she knew my voice type, knows my voice type, and when those kind of roles arrive, I tend to either get those auditions or just be brought into the studio, just based off of what I've done before.
Hmm. This is going back. I did think it was cool that you got to be in one of the Family Guy video games.
Oh man. Yeah, that's just I almost put that on my IMDb as kind of a joke almost. It's
Uh,
true, I did work it. That was one of the mobile games back then, which through voices.com there is, I would just submit on anything and everything, you know. I'll plan to get back to that soon again too. But so that was just, just another like, sometimes it gets to a point where you're just auditioning for this stuff like rapid fire, and it's like, do the best job that you can, submit the audition, and then move on to the next one. And so even then it was like, it wasn't a Family Guy character. It was what is that character's name from Ferris Bueller? So it was like,
oh, Cameron.
yeah, Cameron from an impression of Cameron from Ferris Bueller for the Family Guy mobile game, which, that's so funny that you brought that up, because that's like, if I ever had to give like a, what's the most obscure thing you've provided your voice to, that I've got that like in the back pocket.
Yeah. What about your first anime experience?
Right. Well, that's funny too because the first thing that I recorded for hasn't come out and probably never will. I think it got shelved, and
Oh,
I can't talk about it because it never released. But it's a funny part of the business, really, where you can be brought on for something, do all of the work, all of the writing and engineering and mastering and everything that goes into that, and it still just might never release,
mhm.
and that goes for anime, video games, just about every part, everything that you can do in you know either just acting in general or the entertainment business just might not make it. uh and that happened for some of the first few video games that I auditioned for and worked on as well. But in a less depressing thought, the first anime, man, that's a great question. Actually, what was? Because I want to say it was Cheap Trick on JoJo's Bizarre Adventure
Mhm.
was the one of the first major characters, but Zoltan Akanen on Gundam NT was really the first time I got to play like a major character in an anime. And, it still, years later, I'm immensely thankful to Stephanie Shea for bringing on a fresh-faced newbie, basically, to play that role.
Mhm. Do you also think that Zoltan is the darkest headspace you've had to go for a character?
Mm. Yeah, I think so. He's just a real sadist. But the thing is, like, and part of why I love portraying villains so much is that, unless you're a mustache twirling, like, Snidely Whiplash tying the maid into train tracks or something, nobody believes that they're evil
Mhm.
or, like they're just this big evildoer, because even for the sickest character, usually they've got some sort of justification in mind. Uh, and those are the kind of acting choices that we have to make, when you have an audition sheet in front of you. Finding the character's motivation. Why are they the way that they are? And with Zoltan, it's just, I feel like I happened upon, like what the core of that character is. Uh, and there's also a little bit of research that has to go into, if there's a role that I'm really like, because here's the thing: when I got that audition sheet, that audition pack, rather, that's Zoltan and then all the rest of the like male characters that I could audition for, and I'm gonna do script analysis on those, so with Zoltan, he really just seemed like somebody who was in pain to me, like had a traumatic past, and as a result was just on a total hair trigger for anything that would make him upset or angry. And the audition copy I still remember is, and it's on my demo reel as well, where Yona uses the fake funnels attached to wires, and that causes Zoltan to completely lose it because he thinks that they're not taking him seriously. And yeah, that's so bringing it back. That's what I love the most, is really getting to dig into somebody who has those layers, you know, because it's depending on sort of where you're at in your voice acting journey, I guess, you don't always get the chance to dig deep into a character like that. So I really relished that experience both on the auditioning side and then also in the booth when I was recording it.
Mhm. Are there any aspects of him you could personally relate to?
Oh man, well everybody's got trauma, I think those who have gone through life and not, had some sort of emotional trauma are probably few and far between. So it's really just you know, I don't want to get too
Yeah.
dark with things, but it was a matter of sort of finding something from my past that, it was a situation where I was personally upset, or something like a really traumatic experience for me. And then as an actor, harvesting that moment, to inform the character. So the other thing too about Zoltan is he's having a great time, even though his great time involves, mass murder. Um, when it comes down to it, he's having a lot of fun. And so part of that performance for me was also making sure that I was having fun, because that's all going to then circle back around, inform the character. And then, yeah. So I had a lot of fun recording for Zoltan. And he's a guy who is always having a great time.
Mm. What about between Geese and Rhys and Fire Emblem? Who do you think that you have more affinity with?
Yeah, that's I would say definitely do you say Rhys or Rhys actually? That's a great question because I
I'm
was
not
saying
sure.
Rhys. Between those two guys, like, Geese is sort of the archetypical archetypal mythical pirate guy who's just awesome and is out on the high seas for adventure, which was fun, but you know, uh, the core of Rhys, I feel like, is in his, sickly upbringing where, he just holed himself up and read a lot of books. That's like, from my childhood, I was always reading. So I was sort of able to bring it back to that, as my personal experience, and how that would then cause him to, I would say his gentleness sort of comes from that aspect of being a very, lonely person, I think. And that was sort of how I approached Reese. And that's, you know similar aspects of my childhood as well that I was able to tap into there.
Mhm. And it is fun for Rhys not just having a normal skin, having the beach thing going on.
Yeah, no, that's something that you know, that was that was fun to record because we had to sort of ground him as a regular person first and
Mhm.
like find where he lives, just in my vocal range and also my performance. And then we had the gentle basker summer skin where he's actually, much more relaxed and having a good time and so yeah, that was an interesting turnaround there.
And was that Patrick directing you for both of those characters?
That's right.
Okay. I were you a fan of the game?
Yeah, I'd played a little bit of Fire Emblem Heroes back when it was new. I call myself a serial dabbler where I'll try just about anything, including gotcha games. Most of the ones that you could name, I've probably downloaded it and played it for a little while. Um, so yeah, I was definitely a fan, even if I wasn't actively playing it at the time. But Fire Emblem in general, absolutely. Uh, going all the way back to on the GBA, the game that was just Fire Emblem, which yeah, that's which one is that? Binding Blade, I want to say.
Mhm.
But yeah, so going all the way back to that, I'd been a fan of Fire Emblem games since then. So getting that chance to be a small part of the world was it was special to me.
Mhm. I know you talked a lot about it already, but
Hmm.
cool, of course, to be part of the Fantasy Star franchise.
Oh man, yeah, I any chance I get to gush about Phantasy Star, I absolutely will. That one was, I've mentioned a few times now how, a lot of these auditions aren't just you're not being sent just one character, like you have a pack of characters that they're looking to cast and you sort of like pick the ones that you think are you're going to be able to fit the best, or maybe for some actors it's they're going to try to hit every single one in an interesting and unique way to show off range. But for me it was like going through that list, I saw Elmir and I was like, oh yeah, this is my guy. Just in terms of the theatrics. And what's great is I had no idea about his involvement in episode 5 of Fantasy Star. Like because when I did that character, I thought like, oh, okay, he's like the cool jester to the king,
Mhm.
and maybe he's got like some machinations or something like as a minor antagonist, and then getting into the booth and finding out that he's also the main boss of episode 5. I've got 2 separate three boss fights, and yeah, I mean, I was overjoyed, uh, especially his raid boss form, Dark Falls Persona. That was a session that I treasure. I had the best time ever.
Mhm. And more technically speaking, what do you think is the case where you've had to alter your voice the most significantly so
Oh
far?
man. Well, it's one of my most well, one of my longest roles now is Cephalon Psy on Warframe. And for him, I am absolutely at the bottom of my register. Uh because like one of the characters that was referenced for his audition was Worf from Star Trek, who, is really deep and resonant. And I found a place that was at the bottom of my register. Crew. Uh yeah, that was
Yeah.
so when I and they, they take that and they even pitch me down further when they add all of the digital effects that make me sound like that AI character. But yeah, that was actually there's a lot of things one of the things that might yeah, that a newer voice actor might run into, one of the issues they might face is putting in an audition for something you think you can do, but then you have to be able to do it for up to 4 hours consistently.
Right.
So, I could do like, I'm really dating myself with this one, but the Claw from Inspector Gadget, like, he's got that voice that's like this. And I could do that for a couple of lines easy, but there is no way in hell I could do that for 4 hours straight because my voice would be absolutely wrecked, especially if then that character has to project or make like battle chatter or whatever, So with Cephalon Psy, because he's at the bottom, this very chesty, resonant voice, there have been times during recording sessions where it got really difficult to continue. We had to stop, take a break, find, even another day to do it at times because, it's and especially during the pandemic, we're all working from. I'm inside my booth right now. We're all working from home, so when I'm going into a studio, I can sort of rely on them to handle everything except for the acting, which I'm handling. But when it's at home, I also have to be thinking about my levels and whether I'm recording a backup or not, and all of these other things. I'm in my home. I have roommates, so that stuff can also add stress or anxiety, which then is represented in, my vocal cords as I try to do that sort of thing. So, that's, the act of lowering my voice, which might just seem like an easier, simple thing, bears out in all of these other ways, you
Mhm.
know. And that's been a challenge, but one that I've been happy to rise to, I would say.
Mhm. What about on the opposite side of that, like the highest character voice that you've done?
Let's see. Well, it's Warframe, those guys have been exceedingly kind to me in terms of continuing to bring me back in for work. Because the first character I recorded for them was Rel for the quest line was called Chains of Harrow. And he's a 13-year-old boy who I, raised my voice to do to do that character. And yeah, I would say that that's still, other than on Lost Ark, there's a couple of like little like brownie, like miniature people who I
Mhm.
did some voices for that I was like, trying to do like a sucked in helium level of high pitch. But no, I would say Rel was definitely that higher register, soft, whispery a little bit, and definitely the one where I had to, because here's the thing, there's sometimes you're going in and you're just doing a bunch of NPCs, you're still trying your best, but like I even said back with Zoltan. There's some characters that you can really dig into and find the layers to, and Rel had those layers, but I was also affecting my voice to match that character.
Mhm. So, still on the topic of video games, when you did get involved with Genshin Impact, were you auditioning for a playable character?
That is. An interesting beast. The easy answer is no. It was
Okay.
I was friends with one of the directors who was a co-director at the time. And he just sent me autocast, hey, we want to bring you in for NPCs on this mobile game. Because at the time, like that was before it had come out. For that was for
Oh,
1.0 or like maybe like 1.02 or whatever characters in and around Mondstadt and like the beginning of Leeway. So yeah, I mean, I had no bearing on what it was going to become. But yeah, it was autocast, bunch of NPCs. One of the mid boss Fatui guys did the Earth, the Geochanter, Bracer, something like that. But yeah, that was man, at this point, reading for a playable character or being a playable character has become this sort of like holy grail among among a certain tier of voice actor, I would say. So yeah, being NPCs at the same time, I wouldn't say it disqualifies me from being a playable character because I would love to, you know, I wouldn't say no if it reached my inbox, but yeah, no, that was and then most recently I came back for one of those characters, Iron Shoulder, the blacksmith. Uh and that's the nice thing about the NPC roles, at least, is that sometimes, since it's all happening in the same world, they'll have an event that goes back to Mondstadt, and maybe I get brought back in for a session for some NPCs that I did. So that's one thing I appreciate.
well, I know you've gotten a central part in Scar on the Praetor
Mm.
relatively recently.
Yeah, that was once again Stephanie Shea, who with NYAV Post. I can't really express enough how thankful I am to her for continuing to believe in me as an actor and give me opportunities.
Have you worked with Mike Sir Nicholas yet?
Yeah, he's kind of an enigma. I don't know. It's I'm trying to think if he ever sat in on any of the Gundam sessions, but that was mostly Oscar Garcia and Stephanie. Um Yeah, I did work briefly with Michael on something that hasn't come out yet.
Okay.
But that was remote, which I did from my home studio at a apartment I lived previously during, I think that was around 2020 or so. But yeah, that's man, that's a funny thing too, where you do all of the networking and groundwork like I was talking about, but then the session itself just ends up being over Zoom, you know? So in a lot of ways, getting to that recording process is sort of like a victory lap where it's like you finally get to meet these people in person, meet them, shake their hand, look them in the eye, but nowadays it's like, one of the unfortunate side effects, I think, is it's very easy as soon as the Zoom call ends to just sort of file that person away and then move right on to the next thing. And I don't think it's like all, dour doom
Yeah.
for people who are recording remotely, because a lot of people are still making their careers happen, and making strides even during this remote work time. But excuse me. But it's just one of those side effects where I wish I could have met the guy more in person. And I'd taken classes before, workshops where I was directed by Michael, but yeah, not directly.
Mhm. What was your experience on Eden Zero then? It's a pretty crazy character.
Yeah, that's stuff like that where I know I'm coming in for additional voices. Those are always such a fun grab bag because you just never know. That was really sprung on me, where it's like, okay, you're this creature who the guy just wrote in, and he sounds exactly like this, and they played the his noise that the Tantumo makes in Japanese. That, like, if you can just make that noise exactly, and and I did, and spiced it up a little bit with my own flair maybe. But yeah, that's like, I didn't audition for that background character or even know that they existed until the script was brought up in front of me. But that's I'd say even a large portion of the work that I do is just having something brought up, boom, and then it's like you have to form that character and perform it, just right off the cuff, cold reading style.
Hmm.
Um, that's something that I feel like I'm pretty good at. So I've managed to get work doing those sort of additional voices in several capacities, with a bunch of different directors and studios.
Hmm. And I have found that people kind of have different answers as to how they took to dubbing. Was it hard for you, or was it easy at first?
Oh, you mean like doing the work itself, right? Yeah, it's interesting because I studied piano, classical piano for 10 years when I was younger. And, that gave me a great sense of timing and
Yeah.
rhythm. And so I found that I took to dubbing really well at first, not tooting my own horn, but, I was able to adapt to the circumstances of dubbing well, is what I
Mhm.
should say. Um, and I started practicing that with Bang Zoom because they have a series of ADR classes where you can go in and they have scripts and scenes from anime that they've worked on at Bang Zoom, and you
Yep.
dub to screen as, a training exercise basically. And Tony Oliver is usually the guy running those workshops. And so I did that workshop so much that I ran out of scripts to read for male characters, and then they added some more, and then I did all of those too. And that was sort of, I did that up until a point where I heard from them that was like, oh, that performance was good. It's the kind of performance that I would like to book. And I took that as like, okay, you're at the point you can do this. You don't have to hammer that workshop so hard. And then yeah, once I did get into the booth with that thing that eventually didn't come out, I felt like I understood what needed to happen because it's a little scary. Like there's no preamble or, like easing you into it or anything. Like when you're going in to do the work, they have that time that's booked and they're just trying to get their loop counts
Yeah.
done. You go in and the engineer shows you to the booth and then it's like, okay, here's preview on loop 1 and you're in it. So as scary as that was, then that's really like a sink or swim moment, so uh scary but exciting. I love it every time I get to do that. And it's really been, I'm happy to work from home, happy to get any sort of voice work, but I love being able to go into the studio and experience that, you know.
Aside from Tony, have you gotten to work with Julie Madalena very much?
Yeah, I did a bunch of coaching with Julie at the outset, where after I'd taken the Adventures in Voice Acting course at Bang Zoom that she teaches, we sort of moved into private coaching after that, and I love her to bits. She gave me a lot of great tools that I'm still using. Um, but yeah, the first time I actually got to work professionally with her was on Eden Zero,
Yeah.
which was, quite some time after I'd already worked with her. But, I send her update emails every so often, just telling her stuff that I've been in, thanking her again, so yeah, that was, yeah, I always look forward to if I'll get to work with Julie again sometime. She's a delight.
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of the modern generation of anime fans that are like around my age don't realize like how prolific she was in her own like characters back then, like with Ray
Oh
Earth
yeah.
and Ghost in the
Oh
Shell
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just that era. Absolutely.
Mhm. So, is there anything else that's upcoming that you're a part of that you can safely talk about?
Oh man, there is a anime movie that I'm hoping will actually get a release because it was recorded uh during like the height of the pandemic, and usually that company has like theatrical releases too for
Oh,
their anime movies. But that's about as much as I could say. But I'm a major character in that, and I've just been like, you know, like really hoping that today's the day they're going to announce, and I can finally announce my character. But there's also that distinct possibility that that might just never get a public release. But yeah, it has been a pretty dry time actually. I'm not afraid to say that there are ups and downs in the business. So right now there's not a ton coming out, but I've in that time I find other ways to market myself or try to reach out to different people I haven't worked with before. So there's stuff cooking, but right now there's nothing major that is on the horizon, I would say.
Okay. Well, my final question then is always asking, what do you want your legacy to be?
My legacy. Well, I got inspired to become a voice actor initially because of Metal Gear Solid on the PlayStation. That was the first, I think that was the first game I played that had acting, voice acting in it. And I was so entranced, and just sort of pulled into the world thanks to their performances. And I would just say, like, I want to be somebody who, if I'm in a game, and I still want video games to be my main, thing that I work on over the years. I want to be somebody who, when somebody sees that I'm a actor in a game, they go like, "Oh, it's a Stefan Martello game. We gotta, then that carries certain fun connotation with it, because it's with like, Metal Gear. Talking about Metal Gear Solid again, like Quentin Flynn. I love his performances in Metal Gear Solid 2 or Kingdom Hearts 2 where he's Axel. That's a guy who I, you know, really anytime I see that he's working on something, I think like, "Oh wow, I want to, see what that game's about." Or, there's a handful of actors that I can think of that I want to be able to do good work and have fun and have that come across in the performance, in a way that makes people happy. Because that's the bottom line, really. Is I love if I get to make people smile, you know.
Mhm.
So whether that's totally hamming it up as a villain who's so over the top that you can't help but smile, or somebody who somebody like Zoltan who is so maniacal and evil. No, it's I guess I do want to be a villain guy too. That's sort of where I seem to have landed, and that's where I'd like to continue to be.
Mhm. Well, thanks. I'm glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was nice to have a little chat.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks a bunch.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
All right, bye bye.